On today's episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, we preview their rotation after two major additions under Mike Brown.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Gavin. I'm the Saturday co-host of the Locked On NBA podcast and a longtime credentialed media member covering the New York Knicks for 8 years now. He's Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Strickland the Greatest Knicks website on the interwebs. You can check them out on all forms of social media over at thestrict.land. If you went to Knicks Twitter Day, you could have watched them hoop this past weekend. But this is Locked On Knicks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Daily podcast on the New York Knicks, giving the most detailed insight on your favorite team at least 5 days a week. So be sure to join thousands of other Knicks fans in subscribing on both YouTube and your favorite podcast platform for the best insight on your favorite team every day. On today's show, we are talking rotation. How do Jordan Clarkson and Guerschon Yabusele fit in? What are the Knicks doing with a whole bunch of wings? How are they going to ensure they get enough minutes for everyone? And who starts at center? That is a question that's also influenced by who starts at two guard. And I'll tell you guys ahead of time, Alex and I disagree on this one. So we're going to get into all of it. But first, I want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, Alex, I'll leave it to you. Bunch of different conversations to be had, bunch of places where we could start on this. How do you see the Knicks rotation shaping up?
Well, I guess we may as well just get out of the way first. We both are lockstep with Jalen Brunson at 36 minutes at the point guard, and the point guard only, and that's it. It makes sense. You wouldn't classify the position that he's playing as anything other than that any other time that he's on the floor. So 36 minutes for Jalen Brunson at the one, 12 minutes for Jordan Clarkson at the one. Also, we both have him slotted in as our backup ball handler. I think that's wise. I think that he's maybe a little shoot happy at times, as Mike and Clyde can attest. But I think that he is a guy that I would more trust bringing the ball down the floor, hopefully getting the team into an action than Deuce at this point still. I think it's just kind of the reality of the Deuce experience that I don't think he's like a point guard. I think he's a small shooting guard, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because he still influences the game really well. But I think his ability to like bring the ball down, set up sets, run an offense is lacking. And I think that Clarkson is not exactly ideal, but is fine at it. He's like roughly a 5 assist per game player. Many of those years off the bench, like that doesn't just happen by accident. Like he's a solid, offense runner. Even if he likes to get his own shot a little more than maybe you would like. But either way, I think that's thing one we can get out of the way before we get into some of the more spicy stuff, like who should start at two guard and also who should start at center. I think those are kind of the two places where we most disagree on our rotations here that we set up.
Yeah, I think keeping Brunson to 36 minutes at the most is pretty key. It would be fair to debate if you listened to our episode yesterday where we talked about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like, they didn't play anyone over 31 and a half minutes all season. And lo and behold, they are plagued with injuries throughout the playoffs. The Knicks play everyone a million minutes, and lo and behold, they are relatively healthy throughout the playoffs. That being said, I do think we saw some level of attrition. I do think Jalen Brunson, as he heads into his 30s, smaller guard, just an insane workload. Like, I would say in NBA history, there are probably just a handful of guards his size that have played as much time with the ball in their hands over the last 3 seasons. Like, you think of guys like Allen Iverson, you think of like the Celtics, the one season of Isaiah Thomas. Like, it is just, I'm sure you could go back deeper. You could say Pistons, Isaiah Thomas, but it is not a super long list of small guards who have done what Jalen Brunson has done in the last couple of years. Damian Lillard, throw him in there too for good measure. That being said, I think you want to play the long game with Brunson. And in a perfect world, I think to some extent, both of us are still Thibodeau pilled. You would probably want him more like 32, 33 minutes. He is just still so essential to everything the Knicks do. I had him at 36. I do think you can make a case to say, hey, give Jordan Clarkson a couple extra minutes, let him take the reins. We talked about it a bit during the Jordan Clarkson episode, but anyone who takes the time to go through his film, like, he will surprise you with some of his passing. And DJ Zula mentioned when he's on the show, like he's a guy who is capable of making pretty much every read a starting point guard in the NBA is required to make. At 6'5", he has access to just passing angles that Jalen Brunson doesn't. Is a talented pull-up shooter. And unlike Deuce McBride, which I think this was the biggest issue with Deuce playing point guard in the past, is like Clarkson can initiate offense because he can, like, whether using a screen or just one-on-one, like, can beat his man off the dribble, can leverage that off the dribble 3-point shooting to get into the lane and make stuff happen. Like, whether he is the best, like, actually making those decisions and scoring once he's into the lane, you can question that. But I do think it gives the Knicks, like, a true initiator of offense outside of Jalen Brunson at the point guard spot for the first time since they traded Emmanuel Quickly. And I think because of that, you can shift in a little bit more time with him on the bench, a little bit more time with him off the ball. And to me, like, even as this is just like a broad rotation breakdown, I think that's kind of a crucial point, because I do think it could shape the rest of Brunson's career. And it's why Clarkson was a really good signing potentially for the Knicks. That if you could tell since the first episode we did, I've talked myself into even more.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's gonna just come down to what level of play Clarkson has in him at this point. And hey, I'm fine being optimistic on it until we see what he does on the court, because I think there is a real chance that he just was unhappy in Utah and was kind of mailing it in the last couple of years, and still was like a 17-5 player with decent splits, while mailing it in Utah. That would be pretty crazy. So, I'm pretty hopeful too. And I agree with everything you said about him being able to be more of an extra ball handler. Let's talk about the 2 guard though. I mean, may as well. I still got Mikal starting. I've got him, but the thing about my rotation here is that other than the Brunson spot, the starting positions I have, I mean, to spoil my next 4 here, I have at 20 minutes, 17 minutes, 20 minutes, 22 minutes for each of the other 4 starters. So, like, how much I want to see them out there as that unit. And the main thing is I want to see a lot of different units. That is going to be a huge thing that is going to need to happen in the post-Tibbs era. Different combinations, different ways of playing, things you can do any given game to go to and say, hey, this team is playing is different. Maybe we shouldn't trot out the exact same lineup for 34 minutes a game or whatever. Maybe we should have more things in our back pocket. So I still think starting Mikal, bringing Deuce off the bench, I think the main reason for that is less about Mikal, and I may as well just say it, more about starting Mitchell Robinson and the fact that I really like double big during the playoffs. I thought that Mitch was, providing game busting defense from like the first thing, and the offensive rebounding, which is great because we've seen that the Knicks can be slow starters a lot of the times, and that helps mitigate that a bit. But all in all, I think a Cat Mitch pairing has worked. A Cat with a rim protector pairing has worked really, really well. And I think that you then take a little bit of that pressure off of like Mikal to have to be like Mr. Point of Attack, like just getting destroyed all game, and having to stop guys trying to like bottle them up driving or whatever to try to protect Cat from foul trouble and all that. I think that you get a little bit of a safety blanket back there. Now, obviously the trade-off is that we saw his screen navigation was not the best. So if you have like a shooting point guard on the other team or whatever, that he's going to have to be trailing around the entire game, then maybe you entertain, hey, maybe a different starting lineup sometimes. And maybe we go with you go with the starting lineup that you're about to pitch in certain game situations. What I'm really looking for is just like the versatility out of Mike Brown and out of his staff that he's going to put together or have put together for him. And that's sort of where I come from. We're having like all the various starters other than Brunson, like not playing a huge amount of minutes at their like quote starting position, because I think that these guys are going to have to bounce around to different positions and play with very different groupings depending on the personnel. And that's going to affect things a lot.
Yeah, so you prefaced it. I have a different starting group. Will not be a surprise to, I'm not even going to say longtime listeners, listeners for the last few months. I have Deuce McBride as my starting two guard. I hear everything you say. I completely agree with you. I think Mikal is a dramatically better point of attack option when Mitchell Robinson's in the dance with him in the pick and roll. I think Mitchell Robinson proved himself once again in the playoffs to still be in, I don't know, like the 5 to 8 best drop bigs in the NBA, and that number might even be low. Like he's just special with like his size, his ability to contain, his sense of space, and it is just such a dramatic departure from Cat. It allows Mikal to play with a lot more confidence, a lot more aggression, navigating screens. That being said, I would argue, I think for the playoffs, and you are using the regular season, Tom Thibodeau didn't always, but I'm assuming Mike Brown will, as a template for what you want to run in the playoffs. And I do think the Pacers at times exposed a lack of sustainability with that double big lineup, and you just felt them teetering right against. And obviously, Indiana is somewhat of a unique animal offensively, and there are very few teams that are going to threaten the Knicks in that way. And you look at like the current slate of Eastern Conference teams, particularly with the Cavs, as we highlighted last episode, as the Knicks' biggest threat. And I am much more open to going double big a little bit more, both in the regular season and in the playoffs, just because I don't think there are teams that can punish them in the same way, with the Celtics and Pacers essentially being out of the mix this season. The Hawks would maybe be the team that would threaten them the most in those configurations. I just like the flexibility Deuce gives you. I've said the number a million times, but the only player on your roster, despite what many considered a down shooting season, certainly a hard finishing season for him, only player on your team in your 6 best lineups last year, a positive in every single way, every time he's on the court. Doesn't really take anything off the table. And yes, you still have to deal with Cat in terms of guarding pick and rolls, and Deuce is smaller and maybe will get screened off the ball sometimes. But unlike Mikal, last season he was one of the best screen navigators in basketball, and he is just an incredible pest. Finds a way to fight through traffic and stay attached. I think he's an upgrade defensively. And I think offensively, like if you want to unlock the ceiling of a Karl-Anthony Towns-based group, the best way to do it is to insulate him with shooting. I think it's going to be a real challenge for Mike Brown, even if he's more creative than Tom Thibodeau, to maximize Cat at the 4. With Deuce on the floor, you can do that. And he adds some legitimate deep spacing and quick trigger spacing that you just don't really get from anyone else on this roster. So I am still an advocate of starting Deuce. I had at the 2 guard spot. And again, this is kind of just all the wings like moshed in. Like I wouldn't mind some minutes with Mikal at the 2, but just the way I wrote it out, I had Deuce at 26 minutes, Josh Hart playing 16 minutes at the 2, and Jordan Clarkson playing 6 minutes at the 2.
Well, funny enough, I actually have Mikal at 20 minutes at the 2, Deuce at 22 minutes at the 2, but that's where he gets all of his minutes. And then Jordan Clarkson was 6 to give Clarkson a total of 18 minutes per game. But there's still the wings to get into, and then how to utilize Yabu, who I think is going to be a pretty key piece for the Knicks and being able to be versatile this year. So we got a lot more to talk about in just a moment when we get back in. But first, we want to let you all know about our friends over at FanDuel, and summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Or you can get sunburned at the beach and play FanDuel. I don't know. I'm in New Jersey. It's legal here, and it's pretty fun. You can go to the beach and place some bets, and well, hopefully don't get sunburned. That's not good for you. But either way, I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. One of my favorite things is that they'll recommend you like some wild parlays to play. It's pretty fun. Like it'll be either ones that are picked by various celebrities or whatever, or just ones that are hot that people are playing. And then you can either start with that as your baseline and build on it a little bit. I like to always call mine the uncut gems parlays. Try to build one of those up, one that's like $5 to potentially win me like $1,000. Haven't hit yet, but someday I will. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we're back in, Gavin, to keep talking through our rotations. And so we've gone through effectively the point guard and shooting guard slots at this point. Now on to the small forward. So I've got OG here starting at the 3, which is different from most of last year where he started nominally at the 4. I guess depending on, I don't know, whatever you consider him versus Josh in the starting lineup. But I always sort of thought of him more like the 3 based off the defensive assignments he would get. But either way, in this case, he is definitively the 3 because of what the rest of my starting lineup looks like. I have him at 17 minutes there. I've got Josh Hart with all 21 of his minutes as the quote unquote 3-man. I mean, he'll play with different personnel or whatever at different times, and that'll change that a little bit from lineup to lineup. And then Mikal Bridges with 10 minutes at the nominal 3. That caps off his total role, which is 30 minutes. I think that him at 30, and I'll just spoil it, OG at 30, I think that's a nice minutes number. I don't think there's any reason that they should have to play 40 minutes a night. And I wonder if maybe that will actually allow Mikal to kind of open up a little more and like play a little less cautious, because obviously he's, I think rightfully, protecting his Ironman streak. That's something that's important to him. I think we saw sometimes this past year where it seemed like he was maybe trying to protect the body a little too much in certain games, like just on back-to-backs and stuff like that, because he knew he was going to have to play like 40 minutes. And, you have to kind of just play it extra safe then and, not be as aggressive. Mostly on offense, I think is where we see with him when there were games where he was just allergic to going towards the rim or anything like that. So I think that gives you an opportunity to, have him play a little less, have OG play a little less, which OG did great at staying in shape this year. And in terms of not getting injured, not having like the pesky, like muscle and whatever, like stress injuries that he's had in the past. I think that it's obvious that he either was taking some notes from Mikal or maybe found a new trainer or something. Like he just seemed way less likely to succumb to one of those injuries this past year. But still, keeping him at 30 minutes, I think, is very safe and would just pay off in the long run. And then, most importantly, here with the 3 spot, getting Josh Hart into what I think is a better role for him, which is like 21 super hard balls to the wall minutes. I think that's the way you want to play Josh Hart. I think that you can very easily give other minutes to other guys and not really skip a beat, but it will win you more minutes with Hart out there and make his shooting not as noticeable if he's mostly playing against bench units, running roughshod on them, getting out in transition with fresh legs all game, and fresh defensive legs too, I think is important with him. I just think that's the way to go. And if you listen to him, that's what he's been asking for a while. If you believe him, if you think there's a little bit of truth in every joke that he used to tell, it seems like he's been okay with potentially taking a little bit of a step back for a couple years now. So hopefully that does end up being the case and he can play like a very high energy, low 20 something minutes per game.
Yeah, a little bit of a different distribution for me, but similar ideas. I have Mikal all at the 3 again, 2, 3, little interchangeable for me. Just depends who's on the court. Obviously, like I've Hart at 16 minutes at the 2. He could be guarding the 3, and Mikal could be guarding the 2. Doesn't really matter. But I have Mikal 32 minutes total. To your point, like agree with everything. Less on his plate, more activity, hopefully more trips to the rim, more trips to the foul line. I think that can only help him. And in particular, I think that can only help his jump shot, which especially like if he doesn't get that kink ironed out, though at times, like he felt like he was like most in rhythm in the fourth quarter, certainly against the Boston Celtics. Like he does have a power transfer issue, and having like just stronger legs under him certainly can't hurt that. I think the biggest thing is that he gets his form right. We'll see how that goes. I have OG Anunoby. I'll spoil it and jump to kind of 3 and 4 for him. 8 minutes at the 3, 26 minutes at the 4, 34 total. I'm with you that ideally that number would be a little bit lower. I just think given that you added Clarkson, who is like a terrible defender, and Yabusele, who is not terrible, but is probably below average on that end of the floor, there's almost even more weight on OG Anunoby to just personally like hold your defense together. And maybe that matters less if Mike Brown totally unlocks the Knicks offense and has a little bit more scheme versatility defensively that makes Karl-Anthony Towns look like a better defender than what he was under Tom Thibodeau. But still, I just think Alex, OG is so incredibly important. Like for now, even if ideally he'd be playing 30 or maybe even 28 during the regular season, I have him at 34. To your point, shout out Casey Smith, who the Knicks stole after the Mavs let him go for some dumb reason. And the Knicks had arguably the best training staff in the NBA last year. I think they won an award for it. I have more confidence than ever in OG staying healthy. I have Josh Hart playing just 8 minutes at the 3. So I guess a little bit more total than you. I have OG at 34 total, Mikal at 32 total, Josh Hart at 24 total. I think if we've learned anything these last 2 years, it is that while Josh Hart is fantastic, he is an elite player at 24 minutes a game. He, at the highest levels, is a liability, playing 40 minutes per game. And playing him in different configurations, having, instead of Precious Achiuwa minutes where you potentially have 2 or 3 at times, because there were terrible stretches where Tom Thibodeau would play Hart, Precious, and Mitchell Robinson together. Mike Brown, even if he wanted to go Crow-Bagnon ball, does not have the option really, because Guerschon Yabusele is a fantastic three-point shooter. And I think that is another element that will help Josh Hart out, where you could put him out there with bench units that have 4 shooters around him, and he's the lone non-shooter. He could have the ball in his hands. He can make stuff happen. Clarkson can set him up. They'll have a nice 2-man game. I think Josh Hart is in line for, if not being as involved, a much more efficient season and overall a much better season than what he had last year.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think that's going to come down to just sometimes less is more. And I think that's the case with Josh Hart. It allows him to play a little more uninhibited, which can be good for him as long as he's not, whipping passes into the second row or whatever. But either way, I think it'll end up being good for him. But we still got to talk through the bigs and how we will potentially work Yabu in, as well as the Mitch and Cat alignment and where we stand as far as who should be the nominal power forward, who should be the nominal center starting games. So lots more to talk about in just a moment when we get back in. All right, folks, we are back in to finish talking through our rotation. Now, obviously, could still be some changes, but it seems pretty likely the Knicks are mostly done. I mean, they still have, it was announced Yabusele took a slight pay cut, which is helping the Knicks out a ton. So props to him. He's already winning me over, where it's going to allow the Knicks to sign, I believe, potentially, potentially 2 more veteran minimum.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Okay, interesting.
Or at minimum, a veteran minimum and a second round exception salary. So they can get at least 1 more vet min on their roster to get up to 14 players, which they have to get to prior to the season. They're hard capped at the second apron again this year because they used that taxpayer mid-level exception to sign Yabu. So kind of good in a way, actually, to be hard capped again. It's going to make the last little bit of finagling kind of difficult for the Knicks here, but I have faith they'll be able to figure it out with Brock Aller's help. He's the cap wizard for a reason, and ultimately I think they'll find some more players. So maybe we'll have to update this maybe a little later in the offseason if they sign someone that knocks our socks off and that we think is going to really be a impact player that we're going to have to work into this rotation. But for now, I think we're both settling in at 9-man rotations. And that next for me goes to the power forward and center arrangement. I would personally, I want to see them try double big to start the season. I really liked what I saw of it in the playoffs. I think that the fact that lineup, it was like per NBA stats, I looked it up, it was like a +4.5 net rating with the Cat and Mitch pairing on the floor as a 2-man unit. The fact that they barely got to practice or play together the entire season and then managed to be almost a 5-point positive in the playoffs, no less. I feel like that's something worth building on. I mean, we've mentioned it a number of times, but we've seen, that with Cat and a rim protecting big, Minnesota managed to build a top defense in the entire NBA. I think that the Knicks could do that. I think it's just going to be a matter of like, if Mitch starts, maybe he doesn't even finish some games, but I think having him start is a huge impact. Like if you come out and your shots aren't going in right away, he can clean them up for you. He can generate extra opportunities. The teams aren't going to be able to get going on the inside right away. with him out there. I think that's really valuable to, restrict teams to trying to just shoot early on in games and immediately feel like they can't get all the way to the hoop. That's big to me. Also, I think the lob threat of Mitch came back in a big way in the playoffs. I think he finally looks as healthy and bouncy as he's looked in years. I think the fact that he was able to get up and get a little bit of lob chemistry with even like Jalen Brunson in the playoffs was huge. Hopefully that's something you can leverage, when the first subs come in, maybe have Jordan Clarkson work with him a little bit too. But either way, I think Mitch starting, to me, it just sort of comes down to like which impact darling do you like better? If you're going to change the starting lineup, do you like Deuce better or do you like Mitch better? For me, I've always been more of a Mitch guy. Not to say that I don't like Deuce, but like I just think that I think you can figure out something with the other guys that could still work on defense. I think with Mitch, it's so unique what he can bring out there, and he just brings like game busting defense right from the start. That said, I would cap him at about like 22 to 25 minutes any given night. Like, don't mess around with his health. Don't mess around with trying to overextend him. Just let him go out there, be his highest energy self for like 20 something minutes a game, stagger him out into like 5-6 minute increments that you throw him out there. I think that's the best way to utilize him. And then have Cat play a nominal 20 minutes at the 4 spot next to Mitch, and then have Cat pick up, a solid chunk of minutes at the 5, and even maybe run small a little bit with Yabusele at the 5 for a little bit as well. That's how I would approach it. Again, I just want to see a lot of versatility, though. Lots of versatility, lots of willingness to switch out of things early, pull someone early and put a new lineup in there, experiment. That's what we need out of Mike Brown and his staff. That's what we didn't get out of the Tibbs staff for the most part, especially this past year. It was just a real lack of experimentation. So really what I want here is just a lot of different combinations. But Brunson, Mikal, OG, Cat, Mitch is the starting lineup I think I would first like to see to start the year. And I'd be open to new things. But that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I think we're on slightly different pages, but big picture, we're on the exact same page. Like always. I did some last second rejiggering here just because I realized my math was wrong, because I was looking at our minutes and I was like, how do I have everyone playing more minutes than Alex? It doesn't really that is impossible. So I took 2 minutes away from OG. I gave them to Guerschon. So my final tally is at the 4. I have OG at 24 minutes, Cat at 8 minutes, Guerschon at 16. At the center, I have Cat at 25, Mitch at 21, Guerschon at 2. A lot of these feel a little low, like Cat at 33. I know that would have him be the second highest on the team. Still feels low for someone who's just such a game changer offensively. But again, if you follow that Cavs model from last year where they had no one playing over 31.5 minutes per game, I think that is pretty reasonable. I think keeping Cat's minutes down, theoretically, especially because we've seen Mike Brown be a little bit more comfortable than Tom Thibodeau, who only started doing this in the playoffs, like blitzing with his big or having them play at the level or having them switch a little bit more. If you're going to have Cat like just be more active defensively, that's going to drain some energy. If you're going to play him in more 5-out lineups to make him more of a focal point offensively, that could drain some energy. So I don't think it would be a bad thing if Cat's minutes are cut by just a little bit. Again, the goal is the playoffs. It is not the regular season. Mitch at 21, I think we're on the exact same page there. I think in the playoffs, you can definitely turn that up to 24, 25, because we threw 3 rounds last year. He was arguably the Knicks' like 3rd or 4th best player. Some people who don't like Karl-Anthony Towns would maybe argue that he was their 2nd best player in the playoffs. That's a little rich for me, but he had an undeniable impact on both ends of the floor in all 3 rounds and seemed to get better every single round. Like, he's incredible. The whole key, similar to Joel Embiid, is just you get him to April healthy. So 21 minutes feels right. Guerschon at 18 feels low to me, and I feel like I'm going to regret that because I think I'm going to love Guerschon Yabusele. We talked about it with DJ Zulo, but his ability to shoot, his ability to attack closeouts, not a ton of switchability defensively, certainly not what Precious Achiuwa brought to the table in that capacity, but someone who can do a little bit of that, someone who can kind of hold their own on the perimeter. I still want to watch more film. I want to form a stronger opinion before making a final claim on that. But I think he is just a guy, Alex, who is going to supercharge their offense. I think we will be asking for more out of him. And the biggest thing that I would have been worried about if Tom Thibodeau was still here was that he would have gotten Obi Toppin and just not get enough minutes where he played, I think, 21 last year on the Sixers to really hit that same rhythm and that same level of confidence and that same level of flow. Mike Brown has had some issues with that in the past. So I'm curious to see what Guerschon's role is. But I think if they're smart, he's going to have a consistent every night role. The Knicks will lean into the fact that they have a really strong top nine. Like, to your point, we're not mentioning like a potential veteran min signing. It could be Gary Payton II. Maybe if they're lucky, they could get Landry Shamet back at that number. It could be DeLon Wright. Like, guys who are capable of playing rotation minutes in the playoffs. Like, we've seen all three of them do that successfully over the last couple of seasons, at least DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet last season. So those guys could certainly factor in. But I think the beauty of what the Knicks have built, like, again, and that's without mentioning like all four rookies from last year. Like, we certainly think someone like Tyler Kolek is potentially ready to play a little bit next season. The Knicks are at a really good spot where they can distribute the minutes, they can keep everyone's minutes down, and play a top nine without, at least on the offensive end of the floor, a lot of weaknesses.
Yeah, I'll just say with Yabu, I feel hopeful that he will still get deployed at the 5. He actually played. I just looked it up. It is probably due to some of the injuries and everything with Philly, but he played 27 minutes a game last year. Very, very big role in that team. I'm hoping. I've got him at 25. I hope that he proves to be as versatile as I hope he's going to be. But what's nice with him is that it seems like he's somewhat comfortable with the ball in his hands, which is nice. Average like 2 assists per game is primarily a center last year, which is pretty solid.
Yeah.
So, the short roll passing and just all in all, having a guy who's comfortable like that. If you can have him out there in a lineup with like OG, McHale, Deuce, Brunson, like that sounds pretty
and
cool
OG
to me.
defensively can nominally be your center in that line.
And,
While
and
Guerschon's the center on offense. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
right, exactly. So and Yabu could be like the kind of stonewall guy, but then OG we've seen can come in with the weak side help for the blocks and whatever and the rim protection. So yeah, potentially some really interesting stuff. I really hope that things work out well for him. But yeah, I'm with you too. I think I made a note that like you try out, you still want to try Kolek, you want to try Huck Porty, give Dottier a few minutes, give Kevin McCullough Jr. a few minutes, like be more open to throwing those guys in a little earlier in games than Tibbs would, and just feel confident that your guys can pull it out. But also be okay with like, fine, whatever, we lost. The kids blew a game with 4 minutes to go, and whatever, like February. Like, who cares? Just let them learn a little bit and see what you potentially have. Because I seriously doubt, based off what we've seen the last few years, I don't really think playoff seeding matters as much anymore. Like, I think, especially the Knicks, I mean, they were road warriors this year. Like, they're a team that's very comfortable on the road, and other teams are very comfortable in MSG as we've seen. So, do whatever you can, try as many players as you can. That's my goal for this year for the Knicks. And hey, maybe they'll surprise us and get an even bigger name on a buyout or something too. It sounds like there's still some fairly big smoke for like Bradley Beal and potentially some other guys going on. I don't know necessarily if I want them to sign him, but that would be a big, a marquee signing no matter what. But either way, I'm sure they still got some stuff to do, some more surprises up their sleeves. But until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you all for listening. And yeah, we'll have summer league coverage later in the week and some other stuff that we haven't quite cooked up yet, if I'm being honest. So we'll figure out some good stuff and have some nice content in your feeds. But until next time, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.